Hello, everybody. Welcome back into another episode of the Off Angle here. It's been a couple of weeks since we've recorded, actually. I think the episode with Yanko is like 9 or 10 days old now, so trying to get all those wonderful schedules matched up. We've got a couple in a row here, over the next couple of days. But for today, of course, we've got Kassad joining us, which is absolutely fantastic. As someone that, obviously I've seen a lot of on the desk and everything, and one of the few people that, having been around the space for a little while, I don't think that we've ever really interacted, to be fair. I've reached out to other names and things and seen them and maybe caught them at an event or whatever, or seen them in person kind of thing, but you're someone that I've not yet chatted to, so I'm happy to have you on,
Yeah, happy to be here, and thanks for the invite. I mean, usually on the events, I'm not like super very social because like the long days and everything, and I just want to crawl back to my room as soon as I possibly can and just go to bed and maybe watch some games or something like that. But yeah,
no, that's fair enough.
Kinda,
Yeah, that's fair enough, mate. That's fair enough. I mean, that tends to be, especially working on the desk, you know what I mean? I think that it's that marathon sprint argument is usually what comes up versus the casters.
It's not just that. It's like the years of traveling, being on the road, being in the hotels, being in the hotel bars, and it's just gonna. I'm a little bit tired of it, That's just a thing. Like since 2015, it's constantly on the road, living in America, and then going back and forth, Europe, America, all the time. And now it's 6 weeks in Poland for Pro League and RMR, and it's a little bit, overwhelming sometimes. So you want your alone time as much as you can get it.
I mean, totally fair enough, to be honest.
I think everybody will agree to that one, especially from the talents, from the production guys, and it's always nice to have some alone time.
Yeah,
I know it's a point that's been talked about before whenever you're on shows. Usually Thorin brings it up, but it is still funny to me that you get people complaining about, 10 a.m. games or whatever. I have to travel this, that, and the other thing. Meanwhile, it's like you guys and the Aussie boys and Jacob and stuff. Like, it was no joke. Like, what do you mean you get to go home every few months or whatever?
Yeah, that's what Jacob said. It's like, yeah, people are, after 2 weeks at home, after 2 weeks on the road, I get back to my own bed. I was like, please, man, I haven't seen my bed in like year and a half.
Yeah.
What are you talking? I'm living in Detroit, somewhere, in Rochester Hills, thousands of miles away for a long period of time. So, I understand. So you can, relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, it's kind of like this maybe quote unquote downtime that you have at the moment. Surely there's an awful lot in between the majors still going on, trying to keep up with all the stories, trying to keep up with all the teams, and Blast is even going. So do you really ever, once you get to that kind of top level of the broadcast work, do you really feel like you get to switch off completely? Is it just that 1 month of the year? I guess that's kind of an interesting question.
I think just like during those breaks, you don't really watch CS because there is no CS to be watched, right? But every other time when you're like not at the event, or you're at home and watching the event, you always need to be like, in the flow of things. You need to be watching the game, see what's happening, like who is playing in what form. So you always have to be connected to like what's going on. You cannot really shut yourself up completely. You can for a few days, just to reset completely if you want to do it like a vacation kind of thing. But when I'm home, like now, I usually have CS on or some football on or something like that's always on for me because I enjoy sports. I enjoy esports obviously, and it's always there. It's part of our life, right? Since God knows how long.
Yeah.
So you cannot really escape it totally unless you really want to reset your life for a few days, which is totally fine as well.
All right. Well, there you go. There's the lovely preamble to get us into things. I think we wanted to kick off with an ongoing saga.
Talk about somebody who seems to be wanting to escape esports, dude. What is going on with Config?
Yeah, not really too sure. Obviously, I think we touched on it very, very early on in the last episode, right? So we'd kind of had the initial, there's been an altercation and he's got injured. Then we had his twit longer. Now there's been, a few reviews have said twit longer, whether it's Richard, whether it's Reddit. There are many different kind of opinions on how to feel about this one. Then we've had another follow-up article from Jackson about this not being the first time, which is something, again, that Richard had kind of alluded to in his many videos on this subject. So, yeah, I think to kind of give our opinions, because we wanted to go through it. I feel like reading, through the twit longer, it's a little bit grandiose almost in places. You do have to feel bad, obviously, that this kind of thing has happened, and seriously injured and having to miss out on a big event, losing jobs on the individual. Then there's kind of, okay, well, there's the team that for me, and I think this is maybe where a lot of people that perhaps are a bit more in the punditry side, I think that your career and your teammates and upcoming events and everything like that has to be the only thing that you think about, the thing that kind of stops you. And I feel when I was younger, I liked to have a bit of a drink and a bit of a party, and I'm like, okay, well, I can do that with my friends, but maybe when I'm in a work environment, you don't want to go to that extreme because it's going to put people off. And, so that's something that very early on I had to say to myself, okay, let's maybe be a bit controlled and don't be like, oh, I'm going to let my hair down after an event. It's like, no, you still need to be a little bit in business mode. And I think that he doesn't seem to have that at the moment, and he's not had that in the past. And now, as you and I kind of mentioned before going live here, Darian, it's sort of, it's not the first time, but it's the most extreme. It's the time that he can't really hide it away from people. So he's got to go, guys, I'm really sorry. I am going to change. And it's kind of like, well, maybe the changing should have already happened, especially when he's, 24, 25 at this point. So it's difficult. You can, on the kind of physical level, you don't wish injury on anyone. You can definitely sympathize, or at least I can sympathize with that. But when it comes to the career and the loss of job and things like that, and maybe even the now unrecoverable position that he finds himself in, I find that a little harder to sympathize with.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin with that. Like, the thing is, like, obviously, as we found out that it wasn't his first time that he had a incidents like this, and I think what happened was he was rightfully fired from Astralis. He damaged his own reputation. He damaged the team. It was a significant problem from them coming into the RMR, and one of the biggest issues why they didn't qualify, because they didn't have him in the team, and he is being punished for that, and that's how it should be. On the other side, I think not just for him, for everyone else, like Malta per se is not a like a happy, fairy tale place. It's a dangerous place there, especially in the nightclubs. I know a couple of people. I had now this is something that I didn't share before, but I can do it on the podcast here. I had a friend. A friend who I used to play American football in Belgrade back in 2005 and 6. And he was a decent guy. He was always joking around, pulling pranks on practices and everything. He was an interesting guy overall. Then I stopped playing. He stopped playing a few years after that. He was planning to return. He went to Malta. He got into some sort of a problem, and they found him in the river, in the sea, sorry, and he was dead. And you can check this up in 2016, 17. The guy died. Malta is a very dangerous place to be, especially like if you end up in a nightclubs, and there's a lot of dangerous people there. That's for sure. And I know this because there's a lot of like Serbian people. That my own brother lives there as well, and he has a wife and a kid there. And it's not the prettiest place, especially during the season, the summer season. There's a lot of tourists, and in these nightclubs, when you go there and you end up in a problem with someone, the best thing you can do is just walk away. Just walk away. Doesn't matter if you're a config, if you are, a normal dude who has like a normal job that doesn't require him to be, with not broken arms, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So if you end up in a problem, especially with a bouncer or anybody else, you just the first instinct need to be to walk away. Just walk away. If you see that he's like saying some shit to you or something like that, just walk away. If you cannot walk away, you need to fight, then you fight, right? And then what happens. But if you can avoid it, then you must avoid it at all costs, because not just that you can, hurt yourself, you can end up, being hurt seriously. You can hurt someone else, if you end up, fight going your way in a way, right? So you can hurt someone else, and you can go to jail, you can commit different things that can happen there. So always the first things should be to just run if you need to. Just, it's fine. It's better than the alternative of you maybe injuring someone or somebody seriously injuring you. It just makes no sense, especially if you're a grown ass man like like Config is. He's like 25, and I think right now what's happening to him, it's his own fault. He made his bed, and he's sleeping in it right now. But I always rated him as a super skilled player, one of the best entries that we had. So I don't think his career is over. Definitely, I think he's free agent now. So if somebody needs to take a risk, on this guy, it makes sense a little bit. I don't know how much, but it makes some sense. I would definitely, after some consideration, probably take a risk on a guy like him because he's definitely skilled. He just needs to figure out these things in his head, right? But he needs to understand that, okay, I'm not a child anymore. I cannot be, going out fighting with people, in foreign countries and, getting myself into trouble. And these other altercations and incidents that he had before, it's just not the way to do it, especially in the esports, and it's like he needs to get over that before he even thinks coming back into the pro scene or anything like that. If I was him, I would look to fix my own stuff right now in the space of next 6 months or whatever. Try to get myself and my mindset back on track before I even actually try to look for a team. Because CS is not going anywhere. He's 25 years old. If he does that, we have seen like people doing much worse, and then coming back to being even better than they were before, like way better than they were before. So I don't think it's a massive issue. Like I said, his punishment was, appropriate to what he did. I don't see any other way for Astralis, other than firing him after this like few of these incidents. If it was like the first time, then yeah, maybe you can go over like try to understand it. But if he keeps repeating, then you need to protect the image that the organization tries to show, and you just showing the exit door. It's on him right now. No, he can control his own destiny right now, nobody else. But like I said, physical altercations in such manner, especially in foreign countries like Malta, like any other country, it can be very dangerous. And he was, honestly, I think he was lucky a little bit that he didn't get more like seriously injured, right? So it's on him right now to kind of deal with the problems that he has.
It's 100% lucky, and this is going to sound weird to some people, but like I've had the good fortune of not getting into crazy physical altercations, and I come from like this. I'm not particularly like well-to-do familially, but I come from an area that is generally higher up. It's a northeast. It's a coastal city of America. It's not going to be some place where you find crazy amounts of rough and tumble play, we'll say. That doesn't mean, however, that I haven't been exposed to through various other means, stories that people have told me, and trying to live vicariously through other people, looking up how this stuff works out. I have, the classic pencil pusher knowledge of fights. I don't have firsthand experience. That being said, when I was reading this Twitlonger, Scriv called it a little bit grandiose. On the one hand, I can sympathize because you might think your life is ending, and under those circumstances, yeah, maybe you do break out all the different English words, to try to describe everything as fluidly as possible. But despite that, it's like, dude, this could have gotten so much worse. And I'm amazed that he was able to, limp away from the fight at all at that point, or just like the fact that the guy left him there. It was two separate cases where there was a point for de-escalation, according to his own Twitlonger, his own words. He could have de-escalated before he got kicked down the stairs, and he could have de-escalated before he chased the guy down and then was, further attacked. So and under those circumstances, I'm amazed that Config is still alive. That is not an exaggeration. I 100% thought like on the gradient between fights that you get into as a kid in the schoolyard and fights you get into as an adult with people who are like, promoting a nightclub or bouncing at a nightclub. Yeah, like this is not the same thing at all, and usually it jumps very quickly to fatality as far as I can tell. Like it could have so easily been death at this point, and the fact that he was still able to walk over.
Sorry, it's just so easy for somebody that you don't know, like you don't know who you're dealing with, right? He can pull out a knife. Yeah. And he can just like stab you in the stomach or something, right? In the leg or something like you and he could just run away into the fucking dark, right?
Yeah.
Like what do you do? Like you just need to walk away. If you can, you walk away. If you cannot, then you defend your life, right? Then you go and it's all in at that point. If I decide to go in, I'm going all in, right? Then it's not gonna end for one of us. But if I can go away, I'll just run away and just keep them at bay and just do your thing with someone else. I don't care, right? I just just leave me alone. I have I don't want this. So I think he, like you said, like you mentioned, he had this point where he, after the bouncer said whatever he said to him, you just say okay dude, and
Yeah.
just go. I'm going to my hotel. I'm going to go to back to sleep. I lost that day. We lost in the Pro League. Tomorrow is a new day. We have RMR coming in freaking 2 weeks. Like, then we want to qualify for Rio, and it's like, who cares? Like, we lost. Doesn't matter. Like, we're gonna lose again and again, but we're looking to win. Like on the next one, it's just he didn't really thought this thing through, and I think maybe the alcohol had an effect on the decision making, and the fact that he was probably alone. If somebody was with him at that time, that was like a little bit more clear headed, I guess,
Yeah.
to just pull him away. But it happened like it happened. Thank God that he didn't suffer any greater injuries, or it could be like a few guys. Imagine if like 3-4 bouncers or 3-4
Yeah, of
dudes, and then
course.
it just could go either way, right? And then I think he ended up being a little bit lucky, which is good. He didn't get seriously injured. He's gonna be fine, and then like we said, he needs to figure out his own stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just too like the thing is that you don't get to the point where you're escalating fights, drunken or not, or alcohol fueled or not, with Maltese, club promoters or whatever. Like you don't get to that point out of nowhere, and that's the second point: is that clearly this can't have been the first time he's engaged in physical altercations, and it might not. And this, I feel weird about even saying this because if it's not true and it is just misfortune, it is like the wackest coincidence of all time. But it might also not be true that this is the first time a career-threatening injury has been the result of his antics, right? We all remember the Complexity story where apparently a freak accident while just walking and tripping in an airport caused his wrist to be shattered. I mean, I don't know of any details that would say otherwise, but the very fact that this later story has shown that it's just one data point in a trend of him doing activities like this makes me calls into question. I mean, he was the main source on that issue, right? So, like, is that even true? And this is the point where I know, Kassad, you had a tweet and you just said it earlier that you would still be taking a risk on config. I'm not 100% sure that I could, in good conscience, say the same thing. Of course, I'm not a GM, obviously, but like when I'm
Neither am
looking at
I.
it, yeah, when I'm looking at it, it's like you know, I can see the upside potentially, but he wasn't as consistently good. I mean, he was very good in some maps, but he wasn't as consistent since his wrist injury. Now he's got another injury. This one potentially much more psychologically scarring based on the situations that went around it. And it's blown up publicly where he hasn't come out. It's not even like he can say, oh, I was brutally attacked and injured, but at least the people are behind me. No, most people are not behind him now. Most people think he's like, all right, I hope you do well, but like, you really fucked up here at the very least. That's like the most tame take. I guess you got some super fans probably, but for the most part, like, I think people are against him, if anything other than neutral. So I don't know if he would actually be able to do it. So I guess, I mean, it sounded like your recommendation was contingent on him actually making progress definitively and showing that he was improving psychologically as a person. But like, I'm not sure this guy's career is actually still going to go on purely because I don't know if he'll be able, not just will he be able to secure employment, I'm not sure he'll be able to recover. And I'm not privy to any details. I haven't talked to the guy, but it just seems like this might be a bridge too far. Do you disagree?
The thing is, like, there are risks, obviously, like you said, the
Yeah.
psychological scars, like maybe it will, affect him along the way, and everything. But there are also values there because he's still high-skilled player. He's a
Mm-hmm.
free agent. He has a lot of experience, and he's 25 only, right? I see this if I was like an owner and GM, and I would see the progress of like the following next few months, right, before I actually try to make a step and acquire him in my team. Like, I want to see like the development of his character, how he's evolved after this. This can be a lesson for him. A lot of people and I met a lot of people who have been in a similar situation, regardless of not related to esports whatsoever. It's just they get into altercation, they get the worst part of it, and they change after that. I see like, okay, maybe this is not for me. I had a similar thing, but not on a physical incident or something. I was on a motorcycle when I was 18 years old, and I had no helmet and I had no nothing, and I was driving with my friend. It's like we were 250 kilometers per hour, and the
Fuck.
road wasn't so good. Like it wasn't really good. It was just straight up line, a little bit ups and downs, but it wasn't really, smart thing to do. And then we were driving back and there was like a little speed bump. We were driving 140 as well. And I was like, after we, nearly crashed, and God knows how we didn't, because if you crash at 140 or 250 without a helmet and equipment, you're just a pancake, nothing more. That's it. You just don't have a head anymore. You're done, right? And I'm thinking like after that, I learned my lesson. Like, listen, I have a one life on this planet, right? Do I want to lose it like this? Is this the way I want to go? I want to risk it because of that, and then you can translate that into the physical incidents like this. And many people learn their lesson after they got a little bit, kick their asses, and just they will learn, right? So I think I would bet on that side of the story rather than him being, too emotionally and, I guess scarred after this. So definitely I would take the risk after a few months and put him back into some sort of a mix, because I think there is value in that, especially because he's a free agent tier 1 player, 25 years old. Yes, he has, incidents, but look at Dennis Rodman, for example, like there's many examples that people obviously Config is not Dennis Rodman, but I'm just comparing like the problematic personalities against their skill in the game. So it can fit, but it is a risk, definitely.
Yeah, so that kind of opens the door actually to something that I wanted to approach on in regards to this, and I think that as you've talked about, as people probably know, you have quite a good knowledge of conventional sports as well, right? Where I think that's kind of fair for a lot of people that are quite serious. There's usually a sport. Seems to be basketball a bit. There's quite a bit of crossover. Maybe in Europe though, there's a lot of like F1 fans that also watch esports, and things like that. But yeah, I think that what you've sort of gone into there, Dennis Rodman's a bit of a classic that a lot of people will know, and I'm not a massive fan of basketball, but I really like the guy, and how he's just very open personality-wise, and also how, indeed, it's interesting to have someone who really toes the line, of not like a bad boy, but you know what I mean, like that kind of thing, maybe pushing the rules a little bit, pushing their team a little bit, but also can still bring their S-tier game when it's needed. It's kind of the big thing, right? Play hard, party hard, I guess. So do you feel that that's something in esports that in a way we might lose, in fact, because, we're in this sort of, as we've seen with Carlos and whatnot, there's a lot of this, mob outrage and things like that where there's a lot less tolerance, let's say, for things like that, where maybe, you indeed go over that line, or where the line is now, let's say, has moved quite a bit.
That's the problem. We don't know where the line is, because everything that you say right now can be, misunderstood, and you can get, crucified. I think there is an army of people who are just like waiting for you or me or whoever else just to say the wrong thing, even if you don't mean it in the way you said it. If you mean something else, they're just gonna crucify you. The thing with Carlos is just one of the examples that we are just living in right now. It's just, I think that like you said, the boundaries are completely almost like faded. I don't even know where it is. Like, it's very dangerous to say anything that's may be considered out of line, because immediately you get canceled, you get crucified and everything. So right now, I mean, when we talk about Dennis Rodman, Config, and there is the other part of that equation. It's called Aaron Hernandez, if you remember him, the Patriots guy, and who ended up in prison and ended up killing himself after the incident and the homicide that he did. It's like, people are different, like personalities are different. You just need to like figure out like who are you dealing with and how can you help him, and how to deal with a certain type of people, and just to see if there is value keeping him in your in your company, in your team, in whatever, in business, doesn't really matter.
Right. Well, Scriv, I know you were thinking about a particular question. I don't know if you feel like fielding it here, but something that it made me think of anyway was that, like, we don't know at what point, like we know where Astralis will draw the line apparently, and it's obviously like if this gets out publicly, or maybe if it's happening at all to the point where you're injuring yourself, like clearly you're too far gone for what we want. And I mean, Kassad, you said earlier, like ideally they would have talked to him and said, hey, this kind of behavior can't continue when it was manifesting earlier, before the blow up that we saw now. And evidently it did manifest earlier based on like the secondary Jackson article that Scrib was talking about earlier. It's just like I understand where Astralis draws the line, and I understand that you're arguing now that like, okay, well, you might want to say pull back and let's see what Config does. But I am kind of curious what the like. He didn't do an egregious crime in the sense of he hasn't gone past any sort of moral line, like period. There's some mitigating circumstances where it's like he was under the effects of alcohol. Obviously, it doesn't absolve him of responsibility, but it's not like, he went out and pulled an Aaron Hernandez, like you were saying, Kassad. He doesn't have bodies that we're aware of that are, no blood is on his hands in that sense. And really, maybe the only thing that he's threatened to that degree has been his own career in that sense. Although I'm sure if you ask people who were on the receiving end of his aggression, maybe they would feel differently. I don't know. That's where like we're talking about the blurry line. It's also a bit different depending on who you are and who you are, in terms of like, are you the person who's doing it? I think the reason Carlos went up to that line and then past it is because he has a history of going up to the line, and people are like, oh, that's just Carlos, it's fine. And maybe he's even stepped past the line, but because it's so blurry and nobody can make up their minds, it's like, well, it's all right. But if you ever cross that boundary of like, now people from the mainstream are responding to me who don't know me and who don't recognize that this is who I am and this is what I do, those people don't have the context that will save you. Like everybody in your fan base and everybody who's following your team, they know Carlos is like the troll or the guy who's like a provocateur, and that's part of the way that he built the brand. But if people who don't know that just see that, then they're responding to something that, I mean, they're not qualified to be outraged for, really, but then they're obviously not going to have the same context in that sense. So, like, do we think that Config will be allowed back in esports, I guess is my question. I mean, it's not just like a case of will he be picked up, but like, you think that even despite the fact that he was at ESL recently with this latest news, that like they're going to be comfortable bringing him back into an event, for example?
Listen, at the end of the line, the guy got into a fight.
You're right.
And like more than once, let's say like that, right? And that's it. That's what he didn't, insult anyone racially. He didn't, didn't anything like, had no hate speeches or anything like that. The guy was just in a fight. So if there is a space for him in esports, definitely yes. It's just that's ridiculous. But the thing is, like, if I'm Astralis, I think the part of the blame goes for them. Let's go back to what you said. Is like after the first time this happens, first of all, before everything, when I sign a contract with any of my players, I'm gonna say like, listen, 85% of your salary is coming from your contract, and the 15% is coming from your, demeanor, I guess, or the professionalism, or whatever you want to call it, right? So if you are late 10 times on practice, I can just deduct that 15% from you. If you get into a fight, I can do the same. If you slap your teammate, God forbid, right, or something like that, right, then I can deal with that, right? And then obviously you sign a contract like that, and up the first time it happens, something, let's say Config did something, and first time it happened, listen, I'm the GM, I'm the guy responsible for the CSGO division. I sit down with him very clearly. I said, listen, I'm just gonna do this for this month. You're gonna be deducted. This is I'm gonna, and then next time this happens, you're automatically gonna be, we're gonna break the contract, and then we're gonna release you from the organization. Anytime this happens, this is not something that we need. This is not something that you need as a player or us as an organization. So I'm saying this right now, and obviously in a one-on-one environment, just in my office, trying to explain how serious this thing is and that it can never repeat. Obviously, because you have responsibilities to the organization, to your teammates, to yourself, and one time is fine. It can happen to anyone, literally anyone. But if you repeat it multiple times, then I have no choice, and I have to release you from the company, right? And that's what they did. And I think it could have been prevented early on if the right people were on it at the time. I think there were probably a lot of loose behavior in the organization in that team as well, like in every other right now. If you can name like top 10 teams right now, and 7 out of them is just people doing whatever the hell they want without anybody overseeing that or supervising or controlling or regulating that at all. And this is what you get. Like players, those are kids, like 24, 25, 20, doesn't really matter. They're kids. It's just I'm imagining myself as a kid at 21 years old, right? I would probably react the same. Like if somebody came up to me and said, "Well, yeah, do this and that," right? I would probably straight up punch him, right? Because I'm a kid. I don't know better, right? And at that age you think like that, it's just normal, right? But if you keep doing it and nobody's stopping you, then you think that's the right thing to do, which is absolutely not right thing to do. And I don't think he had anybody, let's say in the organization, I don't know about his personal relationships with the players or anything like that, but organization needs to be responsible for that. You need to set, to be firm about that. After the first time it happens, listen, you cannot do this anymore a single freaking time. This time you will financially be responsible for this. Next time this happens, you're out. And I think that would make a difference, because many of these players are like monetary driven. I guess
Oh,
that
sure,
would be
yeah.
yeah. So if you slap them on the pocket, they're gonna feel it and they're gonna think twice before they do something. Either they're drunk or not, it doesn't really matter.
It's kind of curious, isn't it? Because while we're sort of talking about that, I was thinking, players are quite precious in both senses, I suppose, for the org and for themselves in the way that we don't have like a 22 player squad for a game that only requires 11. Or at a push, you could argue, like, if you're including subs, like 14, 15 players, right? And on and on and on, whatever kind of sport that you're into, really. There's not many of them that, team based, that don't have sort of like a replacement for the role that you're in or whatever. And I think that that's something that's kind of unique to esports as a whole. It doesn't seem like substitutes are really much of a thing across. We tested it and Valve don't like it. I think League may have also kind of done the same and Riot don't like it, etc. So that's kind of curious in the sense that maybe, an org doesn't want to be as hardline, because then they'd have to go elsewhere and pick up a different player if it carries on happening or whatever. But like you say, I think this sort of deterring them is something that is perhaps being missing. And we're still figuring it all out. Contracts, where they're at, what's meant to be in them, how much should people be getting paid. We've talked about on this show before that everyone feels league wages are way too high, and that affects the rest of the esports market, and that's probably going to burst a little bit, and that's going to bring everyone down. What's that going to happen there? Etc. Right? But I think that is actually a really interesting sort of line of questioning in terms of do we go further back, and how many are we going to get? Are there going to be more Jackson articles and just to keep reaffirming their position? Are we just left to assume that it's something that, him and Drink don't mix? So wherever that's kind of come up, someone's got to keep an eye on config, etc. You really don't know. But I definitely feel like, yeah, when it happens once, it is kind of, you need a light kind of punishment and then a thin ice sort of move, and you really do have to watch yourself. And I don't think that it's kind of like, I can't remember what it's like, beta region or something like that, where, people sit in this area, most people sit in this area where you're comfortable and content and you don't really do anything about it until something bad happens. Your car is a great example where, check engine light or whatever, but you don't go and look to get it fixed until it stops driving, and it's something I think a little bit similar where they perhaps could have caught this and watched this and maybe even helped him, because it could expand into the way that he deals with losses, the way that he deals with games. There's a lot of kind of frustration and everything, and that, it's a sober thoughts, drunk words kind of thing or whatever, that he's got a lot of this kind of pent up frustration. So when he has less control, it all sort of comes out, as it were, and it's not really that he's annoyed at this is all fucking psychoanalysis or whatever, but he's not really annoyed at the promoter. He's more annoyed at maybe himself and how he's played in the game, and he feels like he needs a way to get it or whatever, and unfortunately the outlet that he chooses does not match up with kind of society and yeah, the way that it's developed, of course. and eventually got himself very seriously injured, which is the big thing.
Obviously.
I think that's why we're all
Yeah.
talking about it, you know, because you just cannot avoid the point anymore.
I think you're spot on. Like, he wasn't angry at the promoter or anyone else. He was angry because they lost. You know, they
Yeah.
lost before, and you know they lost to Heroic, and it's like he was angry about that. I think just he found a wrong way to release that anger, or just channel it, or whatever you want to call it, right? But I also do agree with the fact that like organizations right now, you know first of all, the substitute thing, I don't really care about that. Like, if you are problematic and we cannot deal with you, I don't care like who you are. You're just gonna be out. I have the culture of my organization. I have my team. I have my bunch of my army of my fans who are cheering for my team, not for you. They're cheering for the team, for the organization, right? Doesn't matter who plays. That's what we need in esports right now. Fans who cheer for the team, not for the players. So if you are problematic, if you are destroying the culture, if you are destroying the everything that we built, you're out. I don't care if Config is not LeBron James, or Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi or anybody like that, right? So even if it was like, it's if you are too problematic, then you need to find yourself somewhere else to be, and I don't want you to be my problem anymore. But the thing is, like, obviously there's so many competent people in these organizations who are not paying attention to the things like that. How, like you mentioned, like, how is Config dealing with the losses? How is team dealing with the losses? Like, why is this happening multiple times, right? Like, who is responsible for that in the organization? Like, it's easy. Yeah, we're gonna punish Config. We're gonna fire him, whatever. But what if we bring another player and he is the same like that? Like, can we stop that? Can we hire somebody who is gonna keep control of that and understand like what needs to be done, how to organize a team and see like who is dealing with what things in what way? So there's a lot of gaps in these organizations, and most of the people who are working in these positions that are kind of influential in those teams, they're just a bunch of potatoes, dude. Like, as simple as that. Like, they are either friends of someone, or somebody who has no education or no experience, or literally no skill in that department. He's just put there because he did something else for somebody well before, or he was a decent player, or he's a friend to somebody, and then he's just there, right? Because it's convenient, and he does say yes to a lot of things, and he doesn't solve any problems. But that's a problem that we have in the esports right now in many organizations, not just Astralis. I think like a lot of them that are experiencing the same issue, but it can all be fixed. It's the same way like Config can be changed. He can be he can learn from these things that are happening in his career, in his life, physically and mentally, and he can be a better guy and better player coming out of this. I'm 100% sure of that. It's just, like I said, it's just on him to kind of figure that one out.
The obvious joke being, if you're worried that your organization doesn't have enough subs to make sure that if Config does explode again and you need to replace him, you can just have him join Evil Geniuses. They got plenty of players.
Oh yeah, they are just great. Like, they're employing everyone apparently. Well, not everyone.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, with the EG is a different story. If you want to go there, we can go there. But the thing is, like, I'm just so over that. It's just right now, especially right now when they actually qualified for the major.
Yeah.
Now that's the messed up part, right?
Yeah.
Because they qualified for the major, they are acting like they won 4 Grand Slams or something.
Yeah.
Like, not the players. I mean the organization, right? The players, I don't mind the players. The players are fine. I don't care. Like, I'm just talking about strictly about the organization. They're behaving like EG qualifying for major is something that's supposed to be celebrated and like risen into the heavens, like it's some sort of a divine thing they did. When in fact the EG was supposed to be one of the most respectable, longest standing organizations in esports that should be fighting for titles in every sport they compete, right?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
and then you just do this, and it's just, for me, it's just too much, and I decided like back then to just not care anymore about them at all. So it's whatever.
Well, we'll see, mate. We'll see if they make you care during the major, I suppose.
Well,
if,
yeah. Well, yeah. We're gonna see what happens there.
I'm just waiting for the Kassad Pick'em video to come out, and it's just 03 EG, of course.
Right up. I can tell you right now they're going to be my 03.
Oh god, there you go, bless him.
Yeah.
But no, I mean
The
it is a fair
NARMR,
play.
yeah, the NARMR was full of weird reactions for me because obviously we had like, for one, the EG thing. Okay, it's surprising they 3-0'd, but okay, believable, I guess. Especially shouldn't be like, like you were saying, Kassad, it shouldn't be the heroic style celebration because they qualified to a major under what was supposed to be at least like top 2 NA team, and obviously this is before
exactly,
NA team was supposed to even
in their
be
own
like
region.
yeah. So you go through that, right? And then you also have Imperial and Fallen saying, "I dreamed we would win in overtime," or whatever. Like, fuck off. Like, what does that even mean? Then Complexity bomb out. Go
I
ahead.
wouldn't I would believe that is probably even true. The team maybe
sure.
even because it's like it's Brazil, dude.
Yeah.
Like it's like something happening in Serbia right now. I'm not part of that. That would kill me, right? That would just be so hard for me to watch an event happening in Serbia in the game that I love, and I'm not part of it. So them qualifying is a massive thing for the whole event, not just for themselves. But back to EG and North American RMR, it's like it's so weird, right? Liquid won the legend spot, beating EG in that overtime games, but EG they went 3-0 as well, beating I think 9Z and Nouns or I don't even know what the name is, and Furia in the best of 1 too. So yes, for the players, I can understand they should be happy. Breeze, Cirque back on the major. After a struggle, Automatic as well. The kids. That's fine. The players are fine, like I said. But it's just the org has such a wrong mentality and like the culture in it. It's so set up the wrong way that like it just doesn't. It's not gonna breed any success that it should be breeding, right? That EG should be a contender for the title in any game they play because of the financial support they have, because of the structure, because of the army of the fans they have. These guys should have competent people. These guys should have tier 1 teams, and they should be in the semis, in the finals, playing these legendary games. Meanwhile, they're playing legendary game against Liquid in a battle for legend spot at the major, and they're like, oh, we were so close. Such a great performance by our team. Like, no, it's not. No.
Yeah. No, that was my reaction when Complexity invariably end up losing to Imperial, and then they're like, "But we're still proud of the performance put on by our team." It's like performance failing to qualify for the major? What do you mean? Like, okay, I understand maybe you're happy about like maybe you've made some strides recently. Like obviously we saw them take FaZe surprisingly close at Pro League playoffs, and that was a big like, oh man, Complexity might actually be able to do something. But as soon as you fail to qualify for the major in a regional major ranking for a worse region holistically than Europe, either A or B, like I've definitely thought they were going to make it through, especially given their performance. That would be a textbook disappointment, not something you would be proud of not doing. You know what I mean? Like that was just whack to me.
Exactly. Like after the Pro League, they qualified for the playoffs in the last round, and they were depending on some team to beat someone else. I can't remember. And these whole matches they blend together. But the thing is like, they qualified for that playoffs. Yes, they had a good game against FaZe, and then they failed to qualify for the major in the North American region where the 6 teams were qualifying. Yes, the competition was a little bit stronger than expected because all the Brazilians wanted to be there, so that's extra motivation for them, right? And that's a big chunk of like boost of motivation. So playing against those teams, it's not the easiest, trust me, when they have like some extra energy up in them. So the thing is like, but not qualifying there, that's a fail. You said it. I think that is a fail, right? Then you need to. What do they have left? They have Showdown in Blast. If they qualify for the finals, yes, okay, they're gonna play there. I don't think they're probably gonna qualify, but it's gonna be between EG or them. What? But what do you want? Do you want that? That's the question. Do you want to qualify and keep thinking that this is good, when in fact it's not good, or you want to bomb out and just maybe try to restructure some things and get into the 2023 and get some better results, rather than being happy that you went 3 maps against FaZe after 1 year of you playing together. Obviously, they got the off, but 1 year of team, and before that, when they had that extra salt team, and then full support of the tier 1 organization like Complexity with the partnerships with Blast and ESL and everything, and the easiest, I guess, not easy, but easier region for the
Yeah.
RMR. Like, is that a successful year for you? Like, do you want to bomb out just thinking, okay, 2023 must be different? We still have the partnerships. Like, what do we do? How do we not be the, top 16? I don't want to be top 16 if I'm Complexity. I want to
Yeah.
be like up there. I want to be top 5. I want to be fighting. I want to, because the money is there, right? They're investing money in it and they're not getting the results. The same thing happens with many other teams, but yeah, North American region is suffering quite a bit.
I think it might be slightly too far to refer to Complexity as North America's North, but they're getting there. Year after year, it's lots of money. I mean, admittedly, this is more of a budget roster, but it's the facilities and the staff around it that this is not like a free operation or a low cost operation by any means. It might be lower on the salary department than what they previously had with the Juggernaut, but that's different. Like, this is you're still paying all the same people for the most part as a support structure, and you're still flying to them to events and boot camps and all this other stuff. This is still significantly better than the lot that they had with Extra Salt, where it was more of a bedroom organization to that degree, at least in terms of like supporting infrastructure around it. And now to see that they've basically they failed to make the major, they managed to make playoffs at EPL, which is surprising, and even made it close, but that doesn't really matter for like the evaluation of the org as much. I mean, they're guaranteed to be in that event anyway because they have the partner slot. So like that doesn't you're not I mean you're getting more exposure for sponsors or whatever. That's not going to turn any profits or anything like that. And when you're spending this amount of money, people may have forgotten that Complexity is supposed to be a contender organization because in CS:GO it's been a long time since they were even really that close. But obviously, you go back in the history books before they had the Dallas partnership, and this is one of the OG teams, especially of NA Counter Strike. And the idea that now they're going to be content, the players themselves, of course, going to be content with being in the mid tables or whatever is just it's similar to the EG case, organizationally speaking, of like how are you guys happy with being, the second or third best team? I mean, in this case, EG is probably the third or fourth best team in NA. And like the idea that you could even be happy with that as EG, who is much more recently than Complexity winning titles and putting together these like crazy rosters and stuff. That's still nuts to me, and it feels to me like they are missing some obvious plot here. And I'm sure Jason Lake, he's a savvy guy. I'm sure he's not missing it. I'm sure he is realizing that like this isn't good enough. But just like what Yanko said in the last episode, the best thing that could have happened to Astralis is them not making the major, so that hopefully they can make some more explosive budget decision or roster decisions. And in Complexity's case, yeah, maybe the best thing is that they don't make it to this event with Blast, so that they don't even have a hint of like doubt in their heads that they need to make a change for success to come.
Well, I think you said it nicely. Like with the organization, it's like you have the facilities, you have the staff, you have the people, you have the sponsors, you have everything that you possibly need. The partnership spots, not to mention that many teams cannot get to the Blast. Many good teams cannot get to the Pro League. It's many teams that can beat likes of Complexity are not in the Pro League or the Blast, and they have everything they need, right? And they still can make it to be the even top 15 team right now. And that's do you blame the players? No, of course not. I don't blame the players there. Like, their players are 100% playing to the best of their abilities, right? I'm not saying like they're just not like slacking or not showing up for practice. They want to be there. They want to beat everyone. Obviously, that's human nature right there. But I want to like look deep into the organization, see like what did we set up here? What kind of system do we have here? Like, what's going on? Why are we failing year after year after year when we have invested so much money? If I'm the sponsor of any kind of sponsor of Complexity, I'm just looking at these numbers. It's like, why am I paying you $1 million for something like if I'm not on the most prestigious event of the year? Why am I not there? Why am I paying $1 million? I'm not going to pay you $1 million next year. I'm going to pay you 300,000 because you're not capable of qualifying for the most prestigious, most viewed event of the year that I want to see my commercial, my product on that event, right? This is what I'm paying you for. So they need to look, like I said, it's not about the players all that much, right? The players are there, they're playing as I tell them, it's fine. It's just the organizations that they have to like get their shit together in many aspects, in many departments, and try to, fix those issues, build a culture, build a system, that's going to be self-sustaining. That's not going to be depending on one player leaving the team. And that's how you're going to build up the fan base that's going to be cheering for complexity and not for, floppy, for example, right?
Sure, yeah.
They're going to be cheering for complexity, right? They're going to be cheering for the team, not for the player. Once you build that, and then you have a certain culture, and like the players will feel more responsible to that name, and that's how you attract better players and star players, and that's how you build a team. And then obviously there is a coaching staff and there's middle to upper management and all these things, right? They all tie together into this thing, but you cannot just throw 5 people in the room and tell them, okay, you have the partner spot here, and then we're going to send you in this hotel and play, and then you're going to qualify. Of course they're going to fail. Like, look what happened to G2 right now. Like, that's a whole different story. Like, if Yanko said about Astralis, best thing that had happened to them is not qualifying. The same thing applies for G2. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. No, 100% for sure. I mean, it must be the end of the Hooksy saga. I just can only imagine. I mean,
I wish.
Like, I mean, I guess it also is different because we talked about it earlier, right? Script is that with Carlos out, who knows what's going to happen with G2, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's definitely a weird situation for that team. Yeah, I think to just kind of speak on what you guys are talking about though with NA and these teams, and is it, what do you feel maybe is, because the quick fix seems like, drawing in some more international talent, quote unquote. A lot of the teams that, they're more European centric, but then, there is a Canadian in FaZe and whatnot, but FaZe and Vitality look to be the two teams that are opening that. FaZe have obviously been there for a long time, but Vitality's kind of the big one. I think that, they tried to recycle French talent and whatnot, and it just really didn't pan out for them. And, now they're the number 1 team in the world, apparently. So,
Nobody has.
Can we have a whole section just on that, please?
Yeah, like, I knew that would open the can of worms. But, at the very least, they have found success pretty quickly here, fitting in the maybe indeed a difference in styles and culture. And we've talked all about, the French players that remain and the Danish core that comes across. But Spinks is kind of, the one that, I don't know, some maps looks a bit dodgy, but he's slotted in relatively well, and obviously they go on to have a pretty nice Pro League. So I feel like, this is maybe something that they should look towards, perhaps. And the thing is as well, it feels like Liquid are maybe, not pioneering, but are doing a really solid job, I think, of finding someone and getting the checkbook out. And, Yakindar obviously now has been fully signed, and we can talk about this a little bit because I guess it does also class as news. I don't think that anyone's particularly surprised, but, for people out there maybe watching that want to know about this, and maybe some that don't know as well. Obviously, he was still locked in with VP, even though they're not allowed, representation, everything. It's not like they've disappeared as a company, so he was still locked in, still getting a subsidized salary from them, I believe. But either way, he's had to buy himself out of that contract, which I have no idea where to begin with something like that, and can't imagine how much it's kind of cost him, unfortunately. But all the same, he's become a free agent for all of a day, and Liquid have put pen to paper and signed him in. But I feel like this is something, and you can see it with Complexity as well, they've done it on maybe a little bit of a lesser kind of scale, where Orping was a big struggle for them, and they picked up Halzerk, and he looks a hell of a lot better than where Junior was at, to be quite honest. And it's one of these things where it seems to have really revitalized these two teams to kind of push them towards a bit of former glory, or a higher level, or however you want to look at it. And for me as well, I honestly think that if Yakindar, the space is there, right? Like, Astralis is one thing, but G2 and no Nico, no Hunter, really for me opens the door now to this guy, and maybe Spinks as well, if they can both hit the kind of, like, Axile is another name that comes up, to start proving that perhaps, there should be more names in the hat when it comes to the best rifler in the world, and when it comes to maybe for a Yakindar especially, a bit of that sort of, not solo carry, but you know what I mean? The Kovac go kill was a lovely thing towards the end of 21, and maybe we get a bit of that from Yakindar here at the Rio Major. So I for one, am very, very excited. But yeah, to kind of bring it back, how do you feel ultimately about this signing and, you know, Yakinda on the team so far, I guess we could frame it as. And then is it kind of time again, for an EG or whatever, you know, how long is maybe Cirque going to stick in this team? We saw a ceiling from him years ago that he's not been able to hit since. They do look a little bit better now that maybe, they've got like a change in management and a kick up the arse. Maybe that's down to threats of like Indeed being removed from the team. But I do feel like it's time for an EG, even for a Complexity, to bring in, you know, an in-game leader from the tier 2 of Europe would be one for Complexity, for example, because JT kind of, again, continues firepower-wise to look a little weak, or maybe an AWPing presence, maybe a strong rifler for an EG to just give them that extra flame to match on an international stage, right? And not just have to celebrate these domestic victories that they can't even sometimes get to, as we're talking about, right? So
I think we have to separate the things first in the organization and then in the team. I don't think like just getting a player and putting him in the team is just gonna make the team better right now. It just doesn't work like that. You can see, you know, it's you can make an argument about, you know, Yekinder being in Liquid, but they also had the depths, right, at that point. And Nitro was back, so they made multiple moves to get this team to work. They missed quite a bit with Shocks, obviously, but they recognized that immediately after 6 months. Said, okay, this is a bad move. I'm gonna go for Yekinder, or you know, and we're gonna get Debs in to be the coach. And it's like, first of all, you need to clean up your house, right, to see like what the problem is. Where is the leak in the pipes, right? Like what is leaking? What's the problem? Where do we need to in the foundation? Is it something else? You cannot build the roof straight up and just live right in the house. It has to go from the start, right? So when it comes to EG or Complexity or Liquid or G2 for that matter, they all have to look out like to see like where did we go wrong in our system, in our, you know, in the whole processes that we, when it came to the acquiring of players and, you know, setting up the whole game and the team and everything, what went wrong there? Why do we spend money and not get anything? Like, who is the responsible for that? You know, how do we fix that and go on? And then you look for players that are going to be, you know, perfect for your team. You don't have to be in any kind of rush at all, because after you win 3 majors, who's going to remember that you didn't qualify for this one? No one, right? So you have your time, right? That's fine. When it comes to Yekinder and buying himself out, that can be easily resolved. For example, if I'm let's say the GM and he cannot get out because there's 100K missing, I tell him, listen, dude, like if you really want to be here or whatever, like your salary would be $30,000, right? But for the first 10 months, it's going to be 20,000. And from the 11th month, you're going to get 30, and that's how we're going to save 100K, but we're still going to pay your, you know, your buyout for this one. So he can lower his salary to get himself to buy out. There are other ways to do it, right? It's not just like him putting out his money from the bank account and giving it to VPs like, okay, see you guys. There's your 100K. I'm leaving to Liquid. It doesn't work. It shouldn't work like that. There are like other multiple ways to actually, you know, make this thing work, right? Obviously with the qualifying and the sticker money, which is tremendously high as well, you can make things work, because at the end of the day, all these people will get what they want. You will get your money, the player will go where he wants to go, and everybody will be happy, right?
Well, that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Because I think the deeper question is the same thing that we had with Cloud9 acquiring the Gambit roster, not from Gambit because they're backed by an oligarch and those are under sanctions, but by, you know, acquiring them from a Swedish talent agency, I think it was. And so now the question is, has Yakinder been the one to, like, he's bought himself out of his contract? I think the way that they've worded that is specifically so that they don't think that Liquid was the one to fund the money in the first place. Which
it's
is
just the political situation right now is just very sensitive right now,
Right.
and you know, money coming into Russia, coming out of Russia, dealing with any kind of Russian companies that are tied to any kind of political people, it's very sensitive, so you need to be very careful how you conduct the business there. And I can see that's the right way, I guess, to do it, you know, even though it seems a little bit, you know, back channeling and sideways, and like it's a little bit, but they managed to get the deal done. And for most importantly, they get the players, you know, not have to worry about, you know, what if they're going to play the events or not. So finding a way that everybody is happy and nobody gets, you know, harmed in any kind of financial or, you know, other way, is the best way to do it. And Gambit sold the team to whatever, and then Cloud9 got them, and everybody was happy. I think there is always, if you have the smart people, working in the departments as a GM, as a CFO or whoever, right? COO, CGO. It doesn't really matter if he's competent and educated and experienced. He's gonna find a way that makes everyone happy, right?
Yeah.
Dumb people, that incompetent people, they're gonna just try to throw money around, or just to say no, or just gonna do whatever. Like, just gonna make mistakes. And we saw that mistakes many times, even in Cloud9.
There you go. Little nugget there.
But yeah, I feel like for sure it's kind of a weird one in terms of the way that he moves in and that he gets added. I guess to just kind of broadly go back towards that, as people will have caught on desks and all that kind of stuff. But maybe let's look towards the future now that it's more of a sure thing. Do you feel like this Yekindar look, it's something that some people are saying, okay, well, once people start to respect him, figure him out or whatever, he might not be as effective for Liquid. Again, he's kind of got a lot of these numbers, a lot of these looks on the domestic level, which is going to be a bit easier for him, of course. I for one, I believe in it. Like I'm saying, I really am looking forward to what he can do, and I think that I've come out on a couple of podcasts that I've been guests on where you can maybe let loose on your opinions a little bit more. And I feel like they could hit like a top 3 level, especially now that this G2 project looks to be failing, and I don't think Astralis were ever really in contention on it, but there are less contenders, let's say. And I think that it's going to kind of be a battle of Vitality, FaZe, Na'Vi, Cloud9, and Liquid for where we end up at the end of the year. And there might be a few gaps in between those. And obviously, we do have a very nice finish to the year this time, where it looks like, there's the Blast finals and everything, but it looks like the Major is ultimately going to be the last big storied event of the year. So I feel like it's going to put us in a pretty good spot. I'm not 100% sure at this point if every single team is signed on to go to the Blast finals that are going to be in Abu Dhabi. So I think that we're really shaping up for a nice end to the year, and I think that this Yekindar guy can really do some damage against these top level teams. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I think like the style that he's the best entry right now. There is no argument about that. He's just the most aggressive and most effective aggressive player right now by far. Right, there is no match for him right now. But I don't know how long he's gonna be able to do it, because it's a very hard thing to do for a long period of time. You're gonna get either anti-stratted or, like you said, figured out, or whatever. Your form is gonna drop, and then you're gonna cause more problems than use. As an individual, when your form drops, when you stop hitting headshots, when it's gonna happen. It happened to everyone in every sport. Like you will miss your shots, you're going to have a drop in form, and it's going to be problematic. Liquid cannot allow just Yekindar to be their one and only weapon, right? The problem they have right now is obviously the inconsistency of OC. We saw him on Pro League in the group stage. He was absolutely invisible, but then in the playoffs, he was nuts. He was playing really good, and you don't know what to think. Like, can this guy do this all the time? Like, at least some sort of a close level to that. He doesn't always have to be like, Zyvu or simple rating, but can he, deliver decent numbers, good numbers, right, on a constant level? So he is always a threat to other teams, even when Yekindar is not playing well. There's the question of Elige as well. Like, can Elige, be the Hall of Fame player that he needs to be, right? For the next 3-4 years, whatever, right? And then there is Naf, who is by far, I think I always rated him highest in any Liquid squad. I still think he's one of my favorite players right now, and definitely my favorite player in Liquid. And because I know what this guy can do and how important he is to the game, and he's not getting any flashy kills or anything. Like, he's always there at the right place at the right time. That's his strength, and he's getting the kills he's supposed to get. He's good in clutching, he's good in pistols, he can pick up an op if he needs to. He's obviously a good rifler, he understands the game, he can read around. He's pretty good. So, and the main strength, like, he's like a talent. That's for me is a talented player. I'm gonna post this when I do the coaching video in a few days. But for me, that's a talented player. It's not the guy who can only just shoot headshots, right? It's just it can get you only so far, right? The talented players are the one who can read the game, who can counter the opposition, who can use different weapons, who can use different positions. Those are the players like Nico, like even Zaivu, Simple, Elige, Naf. There's multiple players like that, and for me, those are the really talented. That's the definition there. But Liquid right now, yes, they have material to be top 3. We don't know who's gonna win the major. It's super competitive. We saw FaZe. They're not really as they were before. Everybody was praising them in the first half of the year, and with a reason. They won the major, they won the pro league, they won Katowice, they won with the stand-in. It's just they played amazingly, right? And then they dropped off a little bit. They had a chance to win the Grand Slam in the pro league after they won Cologne, and they didn't do it. The blast was iffy as well, and it's like even in the RMR, yes, they got a 3-0, but it was like overtimes. Like they played like 5 overtimes, so they're not playing to their level right now. So that leaves like other teams being the actual contenders for the title in Rio, which is going to be super competitive. Not in the highest stake of CS, like not the highest level of CS, but it's just that the quality of teams is so close to each other right now, and everybody can beat anybody. Even like you didn't mention teams like Heroic, like they can just jump out and just surprise us and maybe reach all the way to the finals. On the last one or the one before that, actually, they lost to G2 right in that semifinals crazy game on Inferno. So they're up there. There's many teams that can actually fight for the title, and Liquid is definitely one of them. On any given day we saw that they can beat. Yes, they had an easier bracket in the pro league, and that's fine, but they can beat teams, right? If OC is playing good, if Vekindar is on his level, Elige is always a threat, Nav, and then they have Nitro, who is a seasoned IGL, similar to Carrigan, right? Like long time IGL right now, but we have to remember that he's also a hybrid one. He's not a natural IGL, but still a long time IGL with a lot of experience. They can be a surprise, and yes, they can be top 3 definitely.
Would be a crazy turn of events considering I think they actually achieved top 3 during this era of like topsy-turvy HLTV rankings. But if it were a more legitimate case where it was after some settling had happened and maybe it was a great finish at the Rio Major itself. Of course, the evergreen question for me is how many Brazilian teams will even make it to the playoffs of the Rio Major. I was quoted on one of the episodes recently saying 0, and I still feel like that is true. Do you guys have any faith in the Brazilian representation? Because Kassad, you said earlier, like they've got a fire lit under their ass because, like even just to qualify to this event, you really do fear those Brazilian teams. Do you think that they'll be a little bit better than I think they will be once we come time to the actual event?
I think they're going to be better than they are, definitely, simply because it's their country, right? And that's the extra motivation. Just take a look at let's say any other sport. You will see like the European Championship in basketball was in Germany during summer, and Germany, who is not especially strong team, they went to the semis, I believe. I go back to the World Cup in football in 2002, where South Korea and Japan were the organized. South Korea was like the semis, and they beat Italy, and it's because like they're playing on a home field in front of the crowd, and we all know that in Brazil is going to be filled with crowd. But the team that actually has the chance to go to the playoffs is obviously Fury. I don't see Imperial just getting that deep simply because there are a lot of good teams right now, just a lot. And but Furia is one of those teams that that can beat anyone, but they can lose to anyone too right now. But if you place Furia and Keserato, Yuri, Art, who is crazy by himself, right, and put him in the arena with like 5,000-6,000 people cheering for them, and we know how passionate they are and everything that's going on and how much they love their players in every sport. I'm not just talking about Counter-Strike, just Brazilian fans in football are just absolutely nuts too. Remember the World Cup there and the whole thing. And I think if you put Furia there, they can beat anyone. Like literally any team that you pick, they can beat them. But they can also lose to Gamer Legion in the opening stage, right? They can. Because right now this whole year has been not satisfying for them at all. In fact, the last 4 years have been not so much. They don't have any great titles. They were close a couple of times, but that's it. They are the teams. I think Yanko said it nicely multiple times. They are the teams that gonna be the team that is supposed to win the event, but then lose in the next round, right? So it's a shame though, because Yuri and Serato, these guys are like insanely good, just insanely good, and like having a couple of more like good players, I think that could move them to a next level where they actually can fight for the titles. It's shame that didn't happen for the Rio Major, but it doesn't exclude their chances. I think as a burst of that, the fans and all of this, it would be good for everyone for them to make it to the final arena, like the top 8, at least for that one game,
Yeah, I think one of the big things that really does affect it is that none of the Brazilian teams made it through to the Legends, if I'm remembering correctly here.
Yes.
So yeah, there was only one spot, wasn't there? So I think that's something that really does have a pretty big effect on maybe how far they can make it, and then also because of that, you're in the Challengers stage where the bigger teams that expect to go a bit further, and there are a couple of them that are in the Challengers stage and everything, right? I think that a Game of Legion, a Mouse, Bad News Eagles, whatever, are kind of going to be ready for the Brazilian buff, as it were, and the crowd buff and everything. So they might be a bit more prepared themselves for their matchup against an Imperial or a 0-0 Nation or whatever it may be. Or, I think 9Z can also be kind of included in the South American kind of pride and everything. They've got one Brazilian player. So, I do feel like it's a bit of a double-edged sword in a sense. So it really depends. It really depends. For an Imperial, it's something that they've probably wanted for so long, and they were denied that chance when they were still, some of the players on this squad were still performing to a decent level, and COVID kind of killed them off, and the lack of LAN events and all that. So I think that they will have a real range of emotions to want to get back into this. But certainly I can see. I think I can probably agree that I don't think that any will make it through to the playoffs. Maybe Furia squeaks through, but even then I don't think that this time, with the field being a little bit more open, I don't think that Furia can kind of make it. And for me, they are a worse looking Furia than what we've seen over the past couple of majors for sure. So could be wrong. Again, that whole buff thing, it definitely is real. But yeah,
it's very real.
I don't know how far that takes you. Maybe through a challenger stage now that they've opened up the crowd to everywhere, right? But I don't know about the playoff end of things, to be honest.
Exactly what my point was going to be is like you're gonna have the crowd everywhere, on every single stage and every single game, and like teams like Gamer Legion and let's say Mouse, all these like teams that are not supposed to be like a major threat to the top 4, top 8, right? They're gonna struggle against Imperial or against 0-0 Nation. I think even though they're the better teams, on paper, I think they're gonna struggle simply because of the crowd. Because it's very different. I remember the time when we stepped into arena with Renegades in Sydney, and how much of a buff that gave us. That's I think it was Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney where we played against Mouse. We lost in the third map in overtime. It's just crazy. They were the better team clearly at that point, right? It was just we were a team for a few months or something like that. I can't remember, but the thing is like we entered there and the crowd is just electric, right? And you can feel it, give you the additional confidence. It just helps you to overcome like the little things that you don't have against these other teams, right? The little inequality difference, right? So you go there, and especially in Brazil, I think 0-0 Nation and Imperial, especially because of Poland, right? And the fact that he has been through it all and he knows how to handle his team in a high pressure situations. Like even though he has like different players than before, he's going to be able to handle them and actually use the crowd to help them rather than freeze them, right? So and the crowd is going to freeze Gamer Legion and possibly Mouse and all these other teams, right? So it can help them. I think that the smart bet, if you are ever going to bet on kind of these kind of matches, would be always be to the Brazilian team, simply because of the crowd. Because I know personally, because I was a part of that, and in Australia, the Australians are similar to Brazilians when it comes to cheering and all that stuff. So you can definitely feel, and it's a big difference there.
Yeah. One of the things that I always go back to, though, is that there is potential for the crowd buff to actually be let's say, a poisoned chalice. If you start losing and you feel like you're losing in front of a crowd, that can be really bad. I feel like that'll happen much less frequently to a team like Imperial, based on the leadership qualities that you were just highlighting, Kassad. But some of the newer teams or newer players who maybe haven't actually had the ability to play on a stage in front of the home crowd before and might be in their own heads about that could very well spell a bit of a demise for them in any capacity for a stage. I think it'll be less. There's less of a chance for that to be negative the smaller the crowd is, most likely. But when you get to those bigger ones, if they do manage to qualify to the arena for the playoffs, that's where I feel like their story definitely has to end. The good news is this will probably be the most viewed major no matter what happens, because it's in Brazil, and like we always know, Brazilian viewing numbers do crazy amounts. So for people who are counting the stacks for that, statistically trying to figure out if there's still consistent growth, this one's going to be a bit of a spike. And if Brazilian teams do make it to a playoff berth or anywhere deep in the tournament, like the longer Brazilian teams are still in the tournament, I feel like you're just going to see that number keep going up, and the next major after this might take a little bit to heat up to the same level. We might actually see a net negative afterwards, because like, how do you even top that? So
Well, the
it's going to
next
be
major is
crazy
in
from that angle.
in Paris, so
Yeah,
I think it's going to be crazy there as well. But for
sure.
Brazil, it's going to be on another level, especially because the crowd is going to be on every single stage and every single match, right? So and to go back to your point is like, even though if you're losing, it doesn't really matter. Like the crowd will be going crazy for your every frag, like not just the round, not just the map, the match. Every frag you
Yeah.
have, they're just gonna be absolutely nuts, right? So that doesn't really matter. You don't even look at the score. You just play. The crowd just carries you and gives you the additional energy, and it can stun the opponents very easily. It happened before. It happened in the other sports. That's how we have, like in Belgrade here, the two basketball clubs, the two biggest basketball. They always played good in European competitions in their home, in their home court, right? And there's like on YouTube, you can find the videos like of like 7,000-8,000 people in the arena, just making the atmosphere so suffocating for the opponents that they cannot handle it, right? And those are the experienced players that are not 20-year-olds that are first time in the arena. Those are the players that are playing, on a highest level for multiple years. Players like Ricky Rubio, for example, but he played for Barcelona, and he goes to Belgrade, play against Partizan, and then there is a crowd of 7,000 people, and the guy's just lost, and it's like many other teams, and it's very, it shouldn't be underestimated whatsoever.
So here's one for you. I know that security has kind of been maybe on the minds of people, and not at lot. But what do we reckon to like signs and cheating? Because I feel like there might be a little bit that goes on. Is this something that, I mean, we're just gonna have to hope that, I guess the stage setup is kind of a big one for me that I think could speak towards that. But definitely in the group stages here, I don't know. It might be a little bit weird at times.
I don't know.
You're talking about people holding up like they're going A or whatever.
B,
okay. Yeah. Okay. That is a bit of a hard one to try to crack in this context, I guess.
It's not that easy to like use that for. It's like you're staring at your screen like super
true.
close.
Yeah, that is also
true. And just that you're gonna like get up and like B, and then you're gonna communicate. Obviously, everything is being recorded too as well. So and I don't know if it's gonna be boots or it's gonna be like the open stage or anything. I didn't check that, but it's not gonna be easy. Obviously, when you talked about security, I was thinking about like more of a security in Brazil.
Yeah.
I think that is the bigger question, like how there's going to be so many people, so many fans, and you cannot really count on every single one of them to be decent and polite and normal. So there's going to be exceptions. So there has to be like a good security measures for the players and everyone involved in the major as well. I think that's the bigger question. For the cheating, I don't think that will happen. I don't think that's the way they do there. That's the way the things being done there in Brazil, and it's easily manageable. If you see anything suspicious, anything that's out of the order, you just empty that part of the arena. It's fine. It's just you could continue, you move on. But overall, I would just focus more of the traditional security when it comes to the event, because I can remember what was the security for the World Cup or the Olympic Games, but it had to be something similar to that, because there's going to be a tremendous amount of people, in wherever that is, in the arena, around the arena, in the bars, in the wherever, right?
Well, where there are tourists, there's also marks, right? Potential people you can grab if you're
Yes.
somebody who's a
Sure, yeah.
local criminal, right? And so that's the other thing is like it's not just the people inside the stadium or whoever that you have to worry about being security minded. You also have to think about your surroundings, think about anybody who's like, out there that shouldn't be, or who's gonna maybe like see if anybody takes the wrong path after a happy hour, you just, that can definitely happen, and hopefully it doesn't, because that's like the biggest fear in the back of everybody's minds, I think, when they're.
And it's not just Brazil. I think on
Yeah,
every
yeah.
single event, the security right now can be a little bit better. That like the fans cannot be, just allowed to walk up to the players in the middle of the hotel, right? Like they're sitting in the bar lobby or something. Like you can't have that, like, because there are people that are gonna do you harm, right? There are people that have some bad intentions because they lost money, or they have something against you, or something you said 3 years ago against their country or something like that. They can walk up and like so easy and harm you, right? And nobody wants that. I think the general security in esports has to be lifted a little bit more right now, because especially when we are back to LAN events. You know how, for example, in Cologne, like it's crazy out there, right? During the event, just absolutely crazy, and the security, needs to be a little bit better. But it comes down to all events, pretty much. It's not just Cologne or Brazil right now. It's just doesn't really matter the country for me. It's just it needs to be like a standard right now that we need to follow when it comes to security. Plus, obviously, the players themselves, they need to be responsible. You cannot go walk around around the arena in the middle of the day where there's the semifinals and expect nothing to happen to you, and the fans not charging at you, and it goes both ways a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had an event where there was like no searching going on or whatever, and then everyone had to clear out and all that,
Oh yeah, you're talking
the
about the iBuy Power
Yeah,
event.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah.
When was that? What year?
That would have been 2019, right?
Right,
because that would have been the first event that Team Liquid beat Astralis in after the
Yes,
addition of Stewie 2K.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there
I
was.
think I was on iBuy Power in 2018. I think we lost to Cloud9 in finals there.
Oh, okay.
In some sort of warehouse. I don't know what it was. It was a warehouse, and I think there was some sort of an issue there.
It's maybe,
I think the crowd was a little bit unfriendly, and they were yelling like a bunch of different stuff. And I think they were like, when somebody's creeping behind someone's back on the stream, and the crowd goes ooh, and things like that, And but yeah, I mean, you cannot really prevent that. That's not really,
sure.
That's not cheating. It's just whatever. But
you just have to have really good noise, and that's
obviously,
spoiler.
like,
it can't be that good, because if it's vibrations or whatever, you're just gonna feel it. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's tough to pull off. But yeah, it's always an interesting kind of conversation to have around, and yeah. So the one thing I wanted to mention as well is kind of, we had, I don't know whether it was like leaks or they just followed them back or whatever, but at the last major, I think it was like G2 fans keeping the Vitality players up or something, like outside of their hotel. If you guys remember the kind of videos of that.
That's normal, man.
Well, okay, fair
That's
enough.
normal.
Then.
Like
fair
that
enough.
happens every single. Just look at the Champions League in football, dude. Like the fans are just fun. They find the hotel, right? They go behind the hotel and they just make noise till 4 a.m. in the morning. Police come in, they chases them off. They come back, they do the same. It's a normal thing. I don't think that's some sort of like security issue. It's just fans being fans there. That's
just
fine.
Unlucky.
I can live with that.
Get those earplugs in, boys. We're gonna have to sleep well tonight.
Yeah, you got to figure it out. The life of being a pro player.
Noise cancellation headsets as well. And hope for the best.
Yeah. All right. So we're kind of drawing towards the close here, guys. We've talked a little bit about the major and everything. Maybe just on sort of like a quick fire. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Who do you think's going to win it? I guess let's get a bit of that. Probably start to ask guests that over the next few episodes and get people to put money where their mouth is. So I guess we'll start with you, Kassad, and then we'll work our way around.
It's a really tough question. Like I'm looking at the teams, and obviously Vitality is in a really good form right now. They are riding this confidence wave, and they won the Pro League, and they're playing well, and it's all good, right? But then you have FaZe. You cannot really count them out at all, simply because the group of players, the individual skill, and the fact they already are champions right now, and they won all of it, and they're chasing the Grand Slam at the same time when they need to win the major. It's just a boost as well. So top two contenders are them, but I think the dark horse right now for me, and if I had to think about like a potential surprise winner, it would be Cloud9, because I think it might be a time for them to actually, do it, because they have been, up and down, and are they going to become the best? Are they not? They're going to be playing the semis, the quarters, the finals. They won Dallas, they come back to Pro League, they lose to Liquid in the semis, and it's like you don't know, but I think they might be ready, simply because like we said before, they have no worries. Obviously, I think they're in Belgrade right now, boot camping or whatever. They're spending a lot of time here, and they have everything they need from the Cloud9 organization. There is no turmoil there. There is no any distractions. Obviously, the political situation is not ideal for people from Russia or Ukraine, and it can be a little bit of a distraction, but I don't think it's for them. They have a great support in Cloud9. I think the system in the Cloud9 organization is pretty good, and they have a lot of people working there, and the process of communication and everything that's being done for the players is quite good. Obviously not perfect, but quite good. So I think they have the best position right now for me to like be the surprise winner. So if I had to pick one, other than obvious FaZe, which everybody's going to be like FaZe, right? It's like the most obvious thing, but I would maybe lean towards Cloud9, and then the second one would be Vitality, but Cloud9 definitely on the first place.
I will say FaZe, and I'm not even worried.
There we go.
Because the biggest thing about FaZe to me is that until they actually do fail in the big event at like the grand stakes where there's a crowd and there's all these factors where like it sounds really silly to say that like we're a specific kind of LAN team that only really activates when it's the arena, and we only like imagine how crazy it is for Kerrigan to say we only care about the majors, Cologne and Katowice. Those are the only 4 events we really care about enough to win. And it's like, bro, like the amount of teams that never even get to go to those things, and you're just saying those are the only ones you care about. But that's what excellence can look like if you're really that good. So I'm totally trusting in the Kerrigan right now. The Kerrigan effect of like practicing up and gearing up for it would have been a little bit easier for me if they had won EPL or maybe looked a little bit more convincing against C9. But that was an arena or a studio as opposed to an arena match. And really, now that they've 3-0'd, overtimes included, there's not really any worry for me that they can make it past Legends. Another 3-0, perhaps, at the very least, another 3 wins in the Legends stage. And then off they go to the arena where they will surely cruise to victory. Or maybe not so
That's
cruising.
A lot of steps, man.
Yeah. FaZe specifically is a team that doesn't really cruise necessarily, but as bumpy as the road is, they somehow get to their destination. So until they prove me wrong, I'm just going to continue backing them, and that's my hard-boiled analysis for you there.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay. So being in the third and final position, I'm left with.
Oh yeah, obviously, Scriv, you have to back G2. You're the one who said G2 in the last episode could win the whole major, right?
Yeah.
Did you really say that?
I did.
I wouldn't join the podcast. You should have told me. So.
Not as like a full step, but in a similar sort of energy as you. Where
he's backing out now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But no, it was.
No, he did say it was a dark horse.
Beep.
Yeah. But now, totally, even just to entertain the idea was totally wrong. I now know.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Yanko did tell me off pretty quickly as well, and said that I'd kind of been baited in, which I guess I had been a little bit, but
you did ride the Hooksy wave, did you?
I mean, I don't think I just kind of like. I don't know. I'm big fan of Nico, big fan of Hunter. I just felt like that they maybe could have worked around this Huxley issue, and then
It should be enough to qualify for the
Yeah.
major.
Yeah, for sure. We'd be maybe.
I was going to say exactly
having
that.
that
There's no
conversation.
shot. Nico, Hunter, Mondesi, these people aren't
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
major.
yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
And of course, JKS as well, like a solid veteran player. Like you'd think, surely they can make it through. But there's a little bit of there's something dragging us behind here, and we just couldn't speed up. I don't know what it was. It was shaped
it's
like a
big question
Giga
what it
Chad.
was.
But,
Yeah. I don't know.
It's the org that's dragging them behind. That's the thing. But it's a different topic anyway.
Yeah,
What is your pick?
Yes. So, like I was kind of saying, I'm kind of left in the position where I either have to go for like some kind of wild hot take, or maybe I end up just sort of going with the consensus. I think I'll. Yeah, I think I have to come at it from an angle that's a little bit interesting. I still feel like FaZe. I think the logic that you've got, Pronogo, is pretty sound, where it's like until they indeed falter or whatever, it's hard to maybe move away from them. But I feel like for me, the interesting, at least, storyline, and, love to push a storyline or whatever, would be Na'Vi, actually, where, we've seen kind of Simple has worked his way up in the career, had all these hardships, still outperforming everyone on an individual level, despite, talking of being weighed down to sometimes even like 3 players at once, maybe. And eventually he gets his major, and then, this wild situation, as we've kind of said, maybe we were robbed of an era of Na'Vi and whatnot, but now for me, I think that because the field is a little more even, it looks like, and not like Antwerp, where it was just kind of the 2 teams who's going to do it, right? No one really considered anyone else. I feel like this is the time, at least for Simple as an individual, to really bounce back and get over that second hurdle, that second kind of hardship in his career, where he's got the big win, he's proved that he could do it given the pieces, and now everyone else is, working around them, everyone else is stepping up their game, even, you could argue, because of that Na'Vi win in Stockholm. So yeah, I really like the idea that this team kind of bounced back. You've got some of these younger members who have had such a topsy-turvy kind of up and down, wild time. Again, political situation, we've got to keep referencing it because it is just so massive for these players. But yeah, I think that Simple plus Blade plus now you can argue the experience of electronics that is coming in. I feel like they're really going to put on a show at Rio. So that kind of has to be not my dark horse per se, but now that the field, and we've seen how some of these teams, looking, and the way that it's opened up a bit, that not everyone that we expected to make the Legends has necessarily made the Legends, yada, yada, yada. I think that Na'Vi are in a really good spot to not snatch it away, but, to pick this one up, I think. So there you go.
Fair enough. 3 different dreams. FaZe, Na'Vi, and Cloud9.
Yeah, I think it's fair though. It speaks to, as we kind of alluded to, all the
Somebody gets
all the
it right,
major
you need to
talk.
clip it and just
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when I say somebody, I obviously mean me. So
Of course.
There you go. Yeah, the video evidence of the Cloud9 prediction coming in.
Yeah.
Listen, they were a dark horse once before at a major. Forget all those other times, but they were once before at a major, and they made it.
They did it.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Shout out to Boston one time.
Yeah.
And there you go. I think that'll do us for the show. So once again, Kassad, thank you very much for coming on. Been great chatting with you, and some nice topics, I think, throughout. Really looking into the depth of where psychology can take you, and indeed, as I think you keep kind of alluding to, you got this episode coming out with Thorin that I think people really do need to check out, all about sort of the coaching and a little bit of the GMing side, I would imagine. Am I right in assuming?
I think it's gonna straight up like be focused around coaching and the level that we need to be as coaches, and that the fact that we are not moving for the past 5 years or more. So it's going to be quite interesting as it comes out. I think people will enjoy it. But like, enough about that. I just want to thank you for inviting me, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
All right. Well, there you go. Thank you very much, folks, for watching at home. And indeed, we will catch you again next week with another episode of The Off Angle.
You're going to love this video right here. You're going to love it. Check it out right now.